Having marched hundreds of miles since Savannah, Georgia, Sherman's army was ragged and dirty and running low on ammunition. At Goldsboro, the men were refit and resupplied. Their march through the Carolinas resulted in thousands of Confederate desertions and dealt a severe blow to Southern morale. In late March, as his 90,000-man army refitted and rested around Goldsboro, Sherman met with Lincoln and Grant at City Point, Virginia, to plan the death blows to the Confederacy and potential terms of surrender. Sherman planned to march from Goldsboro on April 10, feint toward Raleigh, and then join Grant in an all-out offensive against Lee in the Richmond-Petersburg area. Meanwhile, Johnston's army was also short on food and supplies, as they and their commander waited around Smithfield for either Sherman or Lee to make a move. On April 2nd, Richmond was evacuated, and Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia retreated southwest. As Lee fell back with Grant in pursuit, Sherman shifted his aim from Richmond to Raleigh and began his advance on North Carolina's capital city April 10. Johnston had been alerted about Sherman's plans to move on Raleigh and began to withdraw from Smithfield toward the capital. On April 11, Johnston heard the stunning news that Lee had surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia at Appomattox 2 days before. Raleigh in 1865 was a fortified city. A 7-foot defensive wall had been built by slaves around the city. The earthworks were armed with a number of large and small artillery pieces. Despite the protection of the high earthen walls and its guns, the massive Union Army's approach alarmed the capital city's citizens.
So when people realized in April of 1865 that Sherman was heading toward them, Raleigh panicked. You saw state officials empty out all of the banks, empty out all of the Confederate quartermaster stores, take out all of the wounded from the Battle of Bentonville and put them on train cars and move them west away from Sherman's advancing army. Women in Raleigh spent the night sewing. And they spent the night sewing all of their valuables into their dresses and putting on all of the dresses they could in the hopes that they would be spared if their house was burnt. People in Raleigh were quite aware of what Sherman's men were capable of doing. The news of Atlanta, the news of Columbia came with the numerous refugees that flowed into Raleigh ahead of Sherman's army. And with them they brought these really terrifying stories of what it was like to be visited by Sherman's men. And these stories sort of infected the minds of folks in Raleigh to sort of create this imaginary demon, this sort of specter, the bummer of what they could expect at Sherman's hands.
But Raleigh would not see the same devastation that befell other southern cities visited by Sherman's troops.